Is it cancer? That is the big question we have when we experience a cancer scare. And most of us will, at least a few times in our lives. Today we are going to discuss how to resolve a cancer scare in the most effective way using new technologies and the latest in genomic precision medicine. That question, is it cancer, can be the scariest question ever, and it's very important to resolve that question quickly. As always, this is not medical advice. It's for informational purposes only. This video is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. And as always, consult with a physician that is board certified if you have any questions or want to take any medical action. Very important. The most important thing is that early detection can save your life in cancer. Because cancer is a disease that grows exponentially, and that means in the beginning for many years, often you have dwell times of 3 years in your body before anything actually happens or becomes visible. So you have cancer in the body, and as long as cancer is very early stage, you can actually treat it much more effectively. In fact, you have up to 10 times higher survival chances if you detect a cancer in stage 1 as opposed to late stage. For example, in breast cancer, you have a survival rate of 99% for 5 years at stage 1, but it goes below 10% once you have metastatic disease. So it is incredibly important to not wait and detect cancer early. And back to the 3 years, it's called the dwell time, where this early stage cancer is in your body as an actual tumor with no symptoms and no way of detecting it based on any kind of thing you're experiencing. But there are more and more ways to actually see something. Now, of course, very important disclaimer, most scares, cancer scares, are not cancer. That's why a lot of primary care docs or OBGYNs are a little annoyed by the cancer scares, because if they have 20 people with cancer scares, 19 of them don't have cancer. But when you look at the statistics, it's actually not the case that a cancer scare doesn't mean anything. All of us in average, we have a 40% lifetime chance of getting cancer, which is shockingly high. It's basically 1 in 2 nearly. And let's just assume throughout your life you have 4 cancer scares, right? That means you have a 10% chance per scare that it's actually cancer. So that's scary. And what's also important to understand, to the previous point, early detection can save your life. There are many stories of patients who got ignored. They thought they have cancer. The docs told them, oh, don't worry, you don't have cancer. You're too young. You're only 29. You don't have a family history. And then they don't get, diagnosed or investigated. And then it turns out they have cancer. Now, in these cases, 6 or 12 months can make a big difference. And when people don't take you seriously, 6 months are gone very quickly. So, in my opinion, knowledge is always better than non-knowledge. And if there's a scare, you have to manage yourself and you have to understand, are you a little hypochondriac and do you have constantly cancer scares? Or doesn't that happen normally and you really have a concern for whatever reason? And if that's the case, it is kind of rational to take action. It is not irrational. Don't listen to people who say, oh, you're just crazy. There's no reason to be worried. When you look at the numbers, it's not true that there's no reason to be worried. We should be always a little bit worried about cancer, and we should have our eyes open and make sure we're getting screened. So my recommendation is always think twice and don't delay. Now, the important thing is that new precision tools give you more options of actually dealing with cancer scares medically effectively. And that is very important, because the reason doctors get a little annoyed by cancer scares is because they couldn't do much in the past, right? If you don't have the tools to investigate, of course you get frustrated as a doctor. You say, well, there's another person that thinks they have cancer. I don't even know what to do, because as a doctor, I have to wait until there are real symptoms or until they fall into some screening window of very basic screenings. So, the frustration on the doctor's side to not take action on cancer scares is also a function of the lack of tools. And that has changed. So today, we have new precision tools that introduce massive amounts of new data points. 10 billion data points for liquid biopsy, for example, for genomic tools. And We should also consider that only 8% of Americans have no care gaps in their preventative care. That's a shocking number. 92% of Americans are not even following their preventative care guidelines. And less than 1% of Americans get accurate genetic intelligence. And that includes huge amounts of people who are actually guideline recommended to get genetic testing, and no one knows, right? No one captures them. So all these new developments, in conjunction with the fact that even in the standard of care we have huge gaps, means keep your eyes open and learn about precision tools and things you can do to address cancer scares. That's why I'm doing this video. And one example is liquid biopsy and genomics, and we are going to discuss this in a second. And we also have to consider that standard of care tends to be 15 years behind the technology that medicine has at their disposal, because it takes 15 years to get reimbursement done, right? And as long as you don't have Medicare going through the economics assessment of new technologies, not the medical assessment, the economics assessment, which takes 15 years for many reasons, that's not being green-lighted to get into standard of care because it's not paid for. So you have an overhang of amazing technologies that can do amazing things. So let's take a look what that means. When you have a cancer scare, that might be suspicious imaging coming back from a mammogram, that might mean you're feeling a lump that no one takes seriously, or you have some GI issues, right, for colon cancer. We just had this case, 29-year-old woman had problems in her colon. No one took it seriously. Turns out it was actually colon cancer. So you have some reason to believe there might be something going on. Now, what do? The first line investigation that is really the cutting edge, in my opinion, is new medical intelligence systems that ask you questions and form high precision profiles, risk profiles, in combination with something called liquid biopsy. Why? Because they are non-invasive, relatively easy to do, but give you tremendous amounts of data. So in my opinion, these are the new frontline tools. So intelligence, as I just described, means you're going through an intake where a profile is being created from your family history, your medical history, to truly understand what your cancer risk is in the different cancer categories, and creating a baseline for a Bayesian system, a probabilistic system, to understand, okay, how much are you actually at risk for all the different types of cancers. That takes like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you're done. It's purely intake, purely answering questions. Once you have that, what you can do is something called a liquid biopsy, where 3 tubes of blood are being taken from you. And in a very complex process, these tubes of blood are being investigated with single molecule precision for cell-free DNA, so DNA in the blood that's circulating outside your cells, that might stem from tumor cells. And this is at this point single molecule precision. So we can read out individual molecules of DNA and identify traces, DNA traces that carry mutations on that DNA that do not occur in your healthy cells and tend to occur in cancer cells. So these are early signals of cancer. And it's a tremendously powerful tool and technology that really changes the game right now in terms of multi-cancer detection. And most importantly, these technologies are very new and they need to be embedded in professionalized, specialized medical review processes. So you don't get a report out of there and says, oh, you have cancer or you don't have cancer. There's actually one liquid biopsy that does that, but everyone hates it. So it's not recommended to do it this way. You have to be more cautious. You have to take a cutting edge technology like that and create high resolution reports that are being reviewed by specialists who then put it in context and look at your previous intelligence, the data intake, say, okay, here's the big picture, and then form an opinion if there is reason for concern of any type of cancer. Currently, this process is not covered by insurance, so that's something to digest financially, but these systems should cost less than $2,000 in total for the entire process, from data to liquid biopsy processing to medical review and comprehensive report. So it's not a crazy amount of money. Yeah, it depends how scary that cancer scare is. But if there's any real reason to be concerned, $2,000, like $1,500 or whatever it is, should not stop you from doing this. So once you go through this initial frontline review, is there a reason to be concerned? And there, for example, turns out maybe there is a reason to be concerned, and maybe you have a problem with the prostate, or maybe with the colon or breast. Then there are additional precision tools that can deliver a rapid resolution of that scare and this initial signal that was found previously. And these new tools, they range from full body MRIs or precision imaging that can now be done once you have these signals, to more genetic risk assessment, right? For example, run based on the intelligence we gathered before. Maybe you qualify for a germline hereditary genetic test to see if you carry any genes in your healthy cells that elevate your risk for specific cancers, all the way to blood and biomarkers. They're much cruder than liquid biopsy, but they help us rule out potentially, other sources of distraction and that inject signal into that. So, long story short, once you have done that frontline attempt to handle your cancer scare and put it into context with a lot of new data, then you can go into more specific precision tools and resolve that quickly. Now, importantly, if you invest, let's say, a couple of $1,000s into that to address your cancer scare, and then it turns out it was just a scare and you don't have cancer, in my experience, this is actually well invested money, because it's not just, first of all, of course, you don't want to have cancer, so you can be happy, but it's often the kickstart, the initiation of patients to get a first taste of that new future of precision medicine. Where it's like vastly beyond the current standard of care, scientifically super grounded in facts and trials and real technology that is game changing. And once you see it, you don't want to lose it anymore. And that puts people on a trajectory of being part of these annual precision screenings and say, you know what, I want to do this every year, because why would I not look into my blood or into other components of my, into other modalities, full body MRIs, to really understand what's going on in my body. And in my experience, once people experience that and see, oh my God, I see all these things, I can pick up cancer mutations with single molecule precision now. Why would I not constantly do that annually to get ahead of any kind of bad development and make sure I'm detecting early? And in total, I did another, video and white paper on that. I believe with the current systems of precision medicine, if they're being applied annually, you can reduce your risk of death between the ages of 20 and 75 by 50%. And there's good evidence for that. Constant precision annual screenings, if done consistently, bring down your risk of death probably around 50%. Just that. Which is amazing when you think about it. It's the frontier of medical intelligence. It is truly getting you into a totally new universe of intelligence. And I believe the annual precision screenings that combine multiple modalities from genomics to liquid biopsy cancer detection to full body imaging will become standard probably in 10 years. And I always say, if you detect cancer through these modalities, it probably saved your life. If you didn't detect cancer because you didn't have cancer and was just a scare, it might save you in the future. Medicine is fundamentally transformed right now by precision technologies. So keep up to date. Very important. Things are changing. Push your physician, right, and tell them about these things. And if they're not up for it, find a different physician that is actually at the cutting edge and likes these precision tools. We see it across the board in other areas of life where technology is fundamentally transforming everything from shopping and Amazon to self-driving cars. Do we really think in medicine nothing is happening? The answer is tremendous things are happening. But in medicine, there are other problems, reimbursement, economics, Medicare, commercial insurance, that delay the implementation of technologies that today already exist by 10 to 20 years. That's bad for us as patients, so we should not wait for that, and we should jump on the train of technology now to make sure our life is protected by technologies as powerful as the ones that power our phones and our cars. So I hope that was helpful, and see you next time.